Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you. Welcome back to 12 Days of Breeders. You guys are in for a treat today. Today we have Andrea Gardner of Desert Sky Poodles in Southern Utah. Andrea, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today.
Yes, thanks for having me.
It's so good. Oh, you have a fun story, so can't wait to share it. So first off, how did you get into breeding?
So my story really starts when I was young as a kid. I grew up in northern Utah on a family dairy farm, and we had dogs. I've always been a dog lover. My first dog was actually a toy poodle, a little white one. I think I was 7 when I got her. But we bred her and sold the puppies. And for us growing up and obviously 35 years ago, that was a lot. It was a lot different to raise dogs and sell puppies. But for us, it was kind of just a part of our culture. It was, for me thinking back, it's great memories as a kid of me and my siblings raising puppies. The money we earned from them was always something that was, we did something fun as a family. We went on a trip, memory. So we bred our toy poodle, and then later, more into my teenage years, we had a couple of Shih Tzus that we bred. So that was something that I had for a few years. And growing into high school, I did an internship when I was a junior at a veterinary clinic and ended up getting a part-time job there and started working at a vet clinic. And I was there the last 2 years of high school plus all 4 years through college, working as a vet assistant and receptionist. And I loved that job. It was a cool job to be introduced to a lot of different breeds, a lot of different, stages of life, medical situations. Definitely a job that I learned a ton and really loved. So I worked there, and in the process of working there at this time, standard poodles were not a very popular breed at that time. This is before doodles started becoming popular.
Right.
Which, as much as some poodle breeders don't love, doodles are what brought popularity to the standard poodle, particularly. Um, so it was before then, but every standard poodle that came in, like they just caught my eye. Like I just loved them. I loved that they had the small, I loved that they didn't shed, that they kind of, they could be kept clean, just like the small dogs I grew up with. But added to that, I loved that they had an added dimension of their athleticism and particularly their trainability, their ability to teach them to do tricks, to potty train them, to integrate them into life. Like there was just something special about them that always, I just caught my eye. So obviously at that time in college was not the right time to do any more breeding. The last litter we did with my Shih Tzu growing up was actually what paid for a semester of college that helped get me through. I was able to work really hard and put myself through college with lots of jobs. But that last litter that we had in that phase of my life was what paid for my tuition one of those last semesters. But I promised myself that the next dog I got, when I was, graduated from college and stable and able to get a dog would be a standard poodle, and it was. That was Gemma. She's actually the dog I used an artist to make my logo. And that's my Gemma. So she's the one that kind of started it all. She's black standard poodle. And I always just planned that I would breed one day. I knew I wouldn't breed her because I was single at the time. I was a teacher. I went to school to be an agricultural education teacher. So I was an FFA advisor. I taught all sorts of classes. So I had her at that time. But like I said, I never intended to breed her because I just knew it wasn't the right time of life for that.
Sure.
But she was the star of my classroom sometimes. I taught a vet assisting class. I taught animal science. I taught an ag biology class. And at times I'd get to bring her in and we'd do different things with her. But my students all knew who she was. And she was kind of she was a fun part of the class sometimes.
Kind of like the classroom mascot.
Yes, yes. I dressed her up for Halloween one year and took her in, shaved her, made her look like a bumblebee, shaved her hair into stripes and had some fun with her. But anyway, so I had her in this time and really, like I said, even though I wasn't breeding at this time, I feel like I've always had that in my heart because when I was teaching these classes, a lot of the topics that I now apply in, now that I am breeding again, would come up in class. Like I said, I taught biology, animal science. So for example, when we talked about genetics, I teach them how to do Punnett squares and to
Mhm.
calculate possibilities of different things. And I'd give them examples. And I use
Mhm.
livestock examples as well as a lot of dog and pet examples because those
Sure.
were grasp, the kids really.
Yeah, there's something you can familiar with. I know, like I was taught Punnett squares with the peas and the purple peas and the
Right,
white
right.
flowers and whatever. But before we go for it, can you, I know for a lot of people, ag is maybe not as understandable. Can you just give us a little bit of an understanding of your, like what your degree was and then what you were actually teaching in the schools?
Sure, sure. Yeah. So agriculture, I should have used the full word instead of the shortened one, but just agriculture. So anything to do with the production of our food, fiber, fuel in some cases is the big terminology of agriculture. So we
So
can
like
be
everything from cornfields to raising
right,
cows
right.
and okay.
Right. So my degree is a secondary education license to teach, as well as I studied animal science, and I have a minor in animal science as well as plant science, and then ag systems technology, which is more to do with. I actually taught a welding class, so just kind of basic welding, plumbing, those kind of things. So that's kind of
Wow.
the three pillars that my bachelor's degree was in is teaching those things. So it's kind of, sometimes people joke about ag teachers being a jack of all trades, that we just have to know a little bit of everything. And it is true.
Mhm.
I ran a greenhouse. I really, grew to love plants, and animals have always been a part of my life. But like I said, it was a mixture of both companion animals and livestock. I think I mentioned I grew up on a dairy farm. I grew up riding horses. Now
Yeah.
at this phase of my life, we're still apart. My husband manages a calf ranch at a dairy farm. My family still has a dairy farm. We also raise show sheep. So we still have our hand, in a lot of different areas, but that's what I did as far as in the classroom. So it's a career and
Yeah.
technical education class is the category it's in.
It's nice. I know not all schools offer it, but this like more of the rural communities have it. And it's such a, I think it's such a useful course of information. I mean, you use it all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely something that people don't always recognize as being something that impacts their life. In fact, I don't teach now, but I do work in agricultural literacy. So just understanding of where our food comes from, how it's produced,
Oh,
being
yeah.
able to make literate decisions about our food, and even politics impact that, like just being
Mhm.
able to understand the ins and outs of those kind of things is what
Yeah. Could you give an example of something like that you'd recently be working on?
so some of my projects I've had a lot lately to do with climate change, topics like our livestock and the environment, so sustainability of our environment as far as our natural resources and what it takes to produce our food. So for
Yeah.
example, livestock has a different environmental impact as for animal source foods than plant source foods, but
Hmm.
yet you have to have the ability to look at that strategically in ways that it's not just saying, oh, let's just get rid of animal source foods and do plant source, because that has impacts as well.
Yeah.
So a lot of what I do is really helping teachers. So I work for the National Center for Ag Literacy. So I work with teachers and provide professional learning and curriculum for them to help them provide that. So you can't teach certain topics without understanding something about food. So even in, science and biology, teachers talk about technologies that are used in biology, like genetically modified varieties of
Yeah.
plants. You can't understand that without understanding the farm and what it takes to produce different crops, and why would someone, turn to a genetically modified variety, how is it produced, etc. So
Absolutely.
it's really a matter of being literate in it and being able to, look into it and say, okay, well, this is one perspective and that's another. So it's a lot of tied into socioscientific issues, which just
Yeah.
means that there's a science of it, but there's also a social science of, acceptance of different technology, stuff like
Yeah.
that.
That makes sense. I mean, like we do our own version of genetically modified when we're
Right.
selecting who's breeding, right? So you can breed for a more resilient to diseased line of dogs or better hips or better color. I mean, you have all these options. It's different. But then there's also the more like, you know, shooting DNA into things, right? Like isn't that like a different way to do genetically modified, which is just
Right.
whole different
Like
animal.
basically, if you're taking DNA from one species and moving it to another, that's
Mhm.
right, versus more of the selective breeding.
Right. But both would be genetically modified, right? Like,
Technically, yes, but there's a
yeah.
lot of discussion among scientists about
Right.
that because it creates confusion. Does that
Big
make sense?
time. Oh,
It
absolutely.
creates a ton of confusion. So,
Yeah. Nobody's mad about having a healthier strain of, pumpkins, but we do get upset when we're throwing other things in there. I get it.
so anyway, but that's what I do. Like I said, when I was in the classroom, I loved teaching Punnett squares. I loved giving examples, different color combinations you can find in animals. I use it today now with
Hmm.
obviously with my dogs and knowing what kind of colors
Yeah.
that are possible with different crosses. I really talked a lot about selective breeding, and selective breeding is just really fascinating to me when you look across the board at all livestock, all animals, but obviously, especially dogs. Like that's what we're here to talk about. But it's just interesting to really look at what humans have done through the years. Like selective breeding changed everything. Like agriculture changed everything for society as far as our ability to not just be hunters and gatherers, way back when,
Right.
that selecting plants that would help us thrive and live and selecting animals that had specific characteristics. I used to show a PBS documentary that's called Dogs That Changed the World. Have you ever heard of that?
No, I haven't.
I have to watch it.
Okay.
It's a little bit older now, but Dog That Changed the World, there's two parts of it, but it just talked about how dogs became domesticated and different theories about how they were selected. And the second part of that is called Dogs by Design, that goes even deeper into purebred breeds, and
Mm.
the canine species has over 300 recognizable breeds. And how did those come to pass? And
Right.
my students love this because they can picture, I'd point out to them, look at a Chihuahua and look at a Great Dane. Like, how did we get two completely separate dogs all from the same ancestor? And
Right.
how did that happen? And how many years did it take? And, do you think mutations were part of it? So then we'd kind of pull in those genetics of, those concepts that help. Because, I mean, students have to recognize that all of these genes have to come from somewhere.
Right.
They need to, and even the creation of breeds, we talk about just breeds in general of, breeds of livestock, breeds of dogs, breeds of cats. Like, how were they created? Well, they're created by taking gene pools from different places and pulling them together. And then we talk about the concept of breeding true, that
Hmm.
we have this breed standard in this set. And I'd actually use doodles as an example because that,
Yeah.
they still are, but were popular at that point, and they understood it to say, okay, well, somewhere someone had this idea that if we take this breed and this breed, that maybe we can create something that has what we're looking for. So then we talk about the implications of those puppies as F1s, that hey, we might have gotten this characteristic, but we might have also gotten another one, and
Yeah.
just really go through. And like I said, it's just really fascinating to look at that from that, in the science classroom kind of a perspective.
Hmm. Can you, because that was such a great exercise you were telling me about you did with your students. So, in this exercise of breeding true, can you tell us what breeding true is, just to define it for anyone who's not familiar? And then, how did you do that exercise with your students?
So I would have them pick two different breeds of dog that they thought they had characteristics that they wanted. So I would say pick two different breeds that they need to be compatible, and then they would create their breed standard. So to say, I'm creating this new breed, I'm going to take these two breeds, I'm going to cross them together, and then in those puppies, so they'd be an F1 cross,
Hmm.
I'd have them list the characteristics. So what size are they when they're full grown? What does their coat look like? What's their temperament? What does their body structure look like? If you're
Yeah.
in, a brachiocephalic breed with a smashed face, or,
Yeah.
one that's not, anyway. So I just give all sorts of examples. They'd create their breed standard and then describe their hypothetical litter and say, okay, these ones I'm going to keep and I'm going to breed. These
Okay.
ones are just
So they
pets.
would so they would look at the genetics and say, okay, like all these dogs are going to have this color combination or this coat texture or this structure. Or they
Here's
might
what's
have like,
possible.
yeah, or we might have like 50% will look like this, 50% will look like this
Right.
based on the genes. Okay.
Correct.
And then
So then they'd go through and then they'd pick which, these were all hypothetical, but they'd pick the ones they were going to keep and then how are they were going to breed. Okay, well, now you have this small population. How are you going to keep your genetics varied so that you're, in safe ranges of inbreeding? Are
Yeah.
you going to bring something else in? And like they would kind of create a whole tree, but it really put to work a lot of things that we do today, even as far as, how do you identify those traits? And as far as defining breeding true just means that in a specific genetic pool, are you guaranteed to get the outcome that you're looking for? So have you defined your genetics and filtered them down? Picture a funnel. You start from multiple breeds and you're funneling down. Can you cross two of the same type of dog and have 100% or very close to the
Sure.
offspring with the desired outcome?
Kind of like all Rottweilers being black and tan with, that kind of idea with white. Okay. Yeah.
Right.
All
No,
right.
it's something that's been really put to work a little bit for me. So my first poodle, the one Gemma that I told you about,
Mhm.
she was a big standard poodle, and standard poodles really got big for a while. In the United States, so a poodle is one breed with three varieties. So there's the toy, the miniature, and the standard. The standard poodle is anything 16 inches and above in height at the shoulder, is how AKC defines it. But that's a really big size range. Like we're talking anything from 30 to 70 pounds, and that's a big difference. Now, of course, in the show world, those are going to stay a little bit tighter in size. But in other countries, there's a poodle called the Moyen poodle or the Klein poodle, particularly in Germany and France. So they actually have four varieties in those countries. The AKC, it does not recognize the Moyen poodle in the United States. It's just standard. So anything 16 inches and above would be a standard regardless of the size. But the Moyen size is something that people want, which we go back to selective breeding. We choose the characteristics that we want that are beneficial to us, that fit our needs and our wants. So people started breeding poodles so that they, selecting for that size. The
Yeah.
challenge with the Moyen size, beyond the point that it's not technically, it's more just a consumer definition, like it's a people definition, not one outlined by a breed standard, is that it doesn't necessarily, it's difficult to breed true because usually what they would do is take a standard poodle and breed it to a miniature in hopes of getting something in the middle. And oftentimes they will, but if you take that standard miniature, they call it an intervariety cross, you might cross it to another intervariety, but they have direct parents that are still 50 pounds. And so you could get a puppy that's still going to be 50 pounds.
Right.
So that's an example of not breeding true because there hasn't been enough time in the progression of the genetics to weed out the genes
Yeah.
for the larger dog.
And based on some genetics, it's easier to accomplish certain things rather
Right,
than others, right?
right,
So,
right,
yeah.
right.
So, what goes into some of that? Is it just because there's multiple genes at play, or dominancy, or all of that?
I would say that there's just multiple genes. I mean, if you think of people, how many
Yeah,
people do you know who have parents that are taller than them or shorter than them? Like
true.
they have a whole family of kids all with the same parents and one's really tall or one's short. Like it happens
Mhm.
all the time, but it's because those genes are still there, but there's influences that come from a lot of directions. Sometimes I feel like, I mean, I definitely think that genetic testing has improved dog breeding and that we can do a lot better with that tool. But sometimes I think we forget to still be humble to the reality that we don't know more than we do know.
So true, right?
There's still a lot out there in the canine genome that we don't know.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, like the white. The white is so misunderstood. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Oh, it's such a good exercise. I love this. I know. It's really important for anybody working with multi-gen to understand how to breed true. And you can do a lot with that once you get it in the areas you want. So
I think it takes a lot of skill to be a really good breeder.
it
A lot of
does.
skill and a lot of time and a lot of recognizing that a lot of generations of
Yes.
having to weed out
hmm
of the.
hmm Yeah, it's hard to do. It takes a lot of dogs, and it's a lot of it's time, it's generations. You got to turn them over pretty quick. So absolutely. Okay, so So then how did you transition then from having this background? You've always wanted to breed them, the timing wasn't right. How did you get into breeding now?
So the time finally came that it was right. I taught for 4 years and then I got married, and that's when I moved to Southern Utah, and there wasn't teaching opportunities here. And that's when I moved more into the curriculum development. I work remotely for Utah State University is what I do now. That's a part-time job. And so once my family was here and my kids were all born, it just was the right time. My oldest daughter was old enough that she was wanting her dog. Gemma was getting older. I knew that she didn't have much time left, and it actually, so that's when we got our first breeding female.
Yeah.
Brought a lot of life back to Gemma for her last 2 years to have a puppy to play with, and that was a really positive thing. But we got Ivy in 2021, and then in 2023 was our first litter. I had found the Honest Dog Breeder podcast from one of my best friends told me about it, and I started
Aw.
listening, and I was gung ho. And so, like I said, a dream that I'd always had, a way that I always wanted to raise my kids, similar
Yeah.
to great memories that I had. Um, 2023 was not a great year.
It was hard. It was a hard year.
And it was rough. The first litter was really difficult. I was definitely trying to take in everything I was learning from the Honest Dog Breeder Society and everything, but it was just a really hard time. And I wasn't quite tuned in. I started a website, but there was just a lot missing as far as my reach and finding buyers. So that first litter was very difficult to get rid of, to sell. Like, it was really,
It happens.
I shouldn't say get rid of, but very difficult to sell. And it was devastating.
Yeah.
Uh, like I said, it wasn't just something that I was like, I want to earn money, or, it was, just a dream that I'd always had, a way I wanted to raise my kids, something that I really wanted to do. And I was like, man, I just don't know if this is the right thing, or even if it's possible. I just felt at that time there was a lot of breeders still of the COVID, uh,
Oh, that was the low of the low.
low of the
Yeah, that
low,
was
difficult
really
time.
hard.
So got through that first litter. By that time I had got my second female, and she was coming up, and I was like, I am not breeding her. Like, I knew I needed a different game plan, but just wasn't sure if I had it in me to execute.
Yeah.
So I didn't intend to breed her, but one of my kids let my male out, and she ended up getting bred. Um, and which was ironic because they didn't even tie. Like, I was right there. I grabbed him. I thought it anyway, but a month later I was grooming her and was like, oh great, she is pregnant. But that was a blessing in disguise.
Mhm.
What kind of turned things around for me, partially time, but also I ended up coming upon the opportunity to do Google Ads, to help drive people to my website. And I was at that litter a year later in 2024, I was able to sell, and it was just
Nice.
a huge blessing, and oh, okay, I can do this. and,
Yeah.
and ever since then, it's just been, able, the ability to just kind of add one thing to another and just be patient with slow progress, but just being consistent.
Yeah.
That I'm just now getting to the point that I'm starting to get deposits ahead of time. I'm finding the kind of puppy buyers that I really value, that value the same things I do. I feel like dog breeding is something that I like to look at things more, less as right and wrong, because there's more of just, it depends,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
that comes a lot from my teaching experience and my work experience in dealing with issues that have multiple sides. Is oftentimes we as humans are looking for an absolute right and an absolute wrong, as far as, what's the best genetics, and what's the best way to test hips, and what's the, should we dock tails and take dew claws off, and there's all these things, and we're looking for this like one end of the road full stop answer, and there just isn't one.
Yeah.
Makes sense. And I think that's part of showing your education in something, is being able to say, well, that depends. Like, with my students, I always felt like that was, I achieved something if when I asked them
Mhm.
a question that they could respond to, well, that depends on what you want. That depends on what you're looking for, and so I think of that a lot as a breeder. But as I've been able to, like I said, the last 2 years have been successful, that I've been able to find those buyers that are looking for the things, value what I'm doing,
Yeah.
That's brought a lot of, and it's been a lot of fun. I've been able to learn a lot about temperament testing, been able to kind of fine tune my genetics. I've got my first keeper female that I'll be able to breed next year that I'm really excited about. And I'm excited to see, here's the two dogs that I started with, and here's one that's even better. Like, success is showing growth from one generation to another.
Oh, closer to your ideal. Yes.
Right. And
Mhm.
it's just getting to the point that, and a lot of breed, what's the word? You did a podcast on it recently, being a breed expert.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I came into breeding as obviously someone very passionate about standard poodles. I, love them myself for lots of reasons, but I feel like I've really pushed myself to understand them better. So rather than just being a biased breeder of, oh, this is the best breed ever, you should definitely have one, just to
Yeah.
really understand some of their pros and cons. I've taken classes with a local trainer that I really love, that really, two of them actually. One specializes in agility, which is what our kids really love to do. Another part of our program that's kind of significant is the 4-H program. There's a dog 4-H program, and 4-H, if you're not familiar, is a youth program. It's usually administered through the land grant university in each state. But just a youth program. It's well known for livestock, showing pigs or goats or sheep at the fair, but there's also a dog program. So the dog 4-H program is for youth to be able to learn how to train their dogs. It's designed as an introduction to a lot of different types of um, dog sports. So we do agility as well as rally, obedience, and showmanship. So it's just a really good introduction to dogs, being a responsible dog owner, basics on training. My kids love agility. We've done a few NADAC trials. Poodles are, very athletic dogs, very easy
Mhm.
to train. So that they're a really good fit for that. But it's something as a parent that I've really seen a lot of neat things come from my kids as they've learned how to train a dog. And as they've failed, there's just a lot of life lessons, as far as resilience,
Yeah.
um,
Patience. Yes.
patience, trying again.
Mhm.
If it doesn't work this way, who can, the humility to find the right person that might have the training strategy that will work. And, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
even just the people skills of, you're mad at the dog right now because it didn't do X, Y, or Z, but is that going to convince them to do X, Y, or Z? No, it's not, like, so I've just seen, and just a lot of confidence. Like, I feel like we live in a world that somehow we need to, and this applies to adults as well as kids, but we live in a world that kids need confidence. Kids need to
Yeah.
believe in themselves that they can do something. And I've just seen that really come alive with my kids and their dogs, because it's just been exciting for them. And, for us, the standard poodle has been a great breed that's been very trainable, very adaptable, um,
Yeah.
very capable of doing all of those things. It's interesting watching. My oldest daughter has a lot more drive and like competitiveness than my second daughter. And it's interesting watching their dogs, which are my two breeding females right now, because they matched my daughters. The older one that has the higher drive has the dog with the higher drive that, is more gung ho. And the one that's more, when we go to agility match with her, she's younger, but
Yeah.
she'll go through the tunnels and just kind of trot along, and they're just happy to be together, but they fit each other. And it just, like I said, I've just had a lot of experiences. I feel like those have built my ability as a breeder to
Mhm.
be able to help match other people to their puppies. As I've learned more about temperament testing and applied it in my program, that's helped match people better to their puppies, because there is a lot of variability in poodles.
Yeah.
Some of them are really high drive that you really need to engage, or they will
Yeah. Oh,
engage
yeah. They'll eat
in
something.
destructive
Yeah.
behaviors, and others are more laid back. And so it's important to find that right fit.
Do you think with your daughters, do you think your daughters' personalities and temperaments shape the dog, or do you think you just align the dogs right? Or how do you think, or how did that come about?
I've thought about that before. I do think that they match each other. Like, they've just kind of, and I have seen that with puppies
Mhm.
as I've homed them. I do keep in close contact with my puppy buyers as much as I can and as they support. Um, And I do think that dogs have an ability to match, especially when they're puppies, that they do mold and adapt to who they've still got a baseline, but they do mold and adapt. So that's a tricky one.
No, I think it's true, but I think you've hit it on the head, which is like if I sell a dog who's a year old or a retired mom, her pace and she's kind of herself. She'll have a little bit of sway and but she's gonna be who she is. But I feel like a puppy is much more like plastic, if you will. Like you can mold it however you want. And I do think that's one of the I don't know, the selling points for buying a puppy, right? Because you get to make it
I
what you
agree.
want.
I
Or
agree.
just like cultures and families, like, you notice like for a bad term, but high performing families, like most of the kids in the family are going to be that high performer. It's just the pace of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes sense. But it is an interesting study to watch with your daughters.
The first time
Um,
I took both of them to a trial because the younger one wasn't quite ready, and so we went alone with my older daughter the first couple, and then when I took both of them, it was just really fascinating. And I was like, this is really interesting.
really
Like,
different, right?
which there's a lot of factors. Age is one of them,
Oh, yeah.
but
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely. I feel like if I were to give advice to a breeder as far as like how do you become a breed expert, like you really have to step outside of yourself. And like I said, I really pushed myself to say, okay, what are the hard parts about, I'm all up in lights that I love this breed, but what are the harder parts? Like what would be easier in my life if I had a different breed, or what would be
Oh,
different?
that's a good way to, yes, I like that.
And that's really been helpful. Like I said, and I try to apply it. Like I said, I've pushed myself really hard, and I've enjoyed it too. But I really enjoy taking training classes because it's really helped me to see other breeds and other,
Oh,
perspectives.
yeah.
I
Mhm.
miss when I worked at the vet. I really enjoyed seeing multiple breeds and how they acted and reacted in different situations because I learned a lot about them. And it's still in my mind, but it's 20 years ago now, so it's not quite
Sure.
as bright. It's not quite as right on the tip of my memory. And dogs change, so there's probably some different things. But something that helped me a ton in learning to do temperament testing, I do the Volhard test, which is probably the most
Mhm.
generic, common generic test there is. I've added a few things and kind of have some other things that I watch for in my puppies, but something that helped me a ton is to do a temperament test on another breed. That was
Ooh.
like
Mhm.
totally, totally eye-opening.
What were some of the things that you learned or noticed?
So something that I've seen. So in my puppies, I almost all of them, like 9 out of 10, easily will retrieve. That's
Oh, sure. Mhm.
they retrieve. They usually have a high social draw. Like they follow the person easily. They usually almost always chase the rag, which is like their prey drive. Which we have chickens, and I definitely know my poodles have prey drive. That's definitely a reality with the breed. But it was interesting to go test these puppies because they weren't interested. Like you put, so in a Volhard test, the idea is that you do it in a new place that the puppy's never been, and with a person the puppy's never met. So new place, new person, the breeder, the person familiar to the puppy puts the puppy in the testing area, and then you watch the puppy to see what they do. Are they interested in the person and the tester, even though they're a stranger? Do they run up to them? Do they run away? Are they scared? Is their tail wagging? Like you're looking at all these things to say, is this puppy comfortable in this new place?
Yeah.
And my puppies typically always run to they might look around for a minute, but they'll usually run to the tester. And these puppies had nothing, they did not want to go to the tester at all. I mean, they didn't whine or cry, but they just stood there and like
Mhm.
not a single one of them retrieved, like and just they were just there. And it really made me realize, okay, but also realizing like this puppy has a lot less. So with a poodle, the AKC definition I think is really good. They say they're wickedly smart. And I like that because it really is important to realize that poodles' brains are always working.
Mhm.
And if you're not engaging them and if they're not, doing some things, they're probably going to be destructing something. Like they're probably, you know what I mean? Like you have to
Oh,
use
yeah.
those smarts in a positive way. this other breed that I was working with, like it would probably be a lot less maintenance as far
Yeah.
as like what they needed. And that was really eye-opening to me as far as talking to puppy families of what do you picture doing with your future puppy one day? You know, are you one that really just likes a snuggle buddy on the couch? Are you one that wants to go for walks and hikes? Do you want to take them paddle boarding? You know, like what do you want? You know, and that's been really helpful to really see that and recognize how that fits. And I do still feel like a poodle's super adaptable. Like I said, especially when you get them as puppies, like they really do adapt to your life. You don't have to take them for a 3 mile walk every day. If you know, you can,
Right.
there's other ways that you can engage them, but doing those tests, and that's something as a goal to even keep growing and keep learning, is I would love to do temperament tests on more breeds because I just
Mm-hmm.
feel like it gives me insight on
Mm-hmm.
what my breed specializes in, you know, as far as,
Oh, absolutely.
you know, reactivity. Even there's a part of the test that they open an umbrella to see if sights, like, you know, surprising things, how the dog responds and how they recover,
Yeah.
you know, stuff like that. And it is different. And so, like I said, that was a huge professional learning moment for me that I just really valued, that I was like, okay, this is a great way to really know my breed on another level.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that. I think it also helps you see some of the things because we get sometimes tunnel vision, right? We see our own breed, and like you said, you know yours and what they're gonna do. And like, my rat terriers, if I were to throw something for them to retrieve, they would look at you and be like, I want that, but why did you throw it? You
Right.
had it. And then they'll go get it and they're like, oh, I'm not going to give it to you. You don't know what you're doing with it. And then they'll go take it somewhere and chew it, which
Right.
is, my GSPs, like they're just born like, oh, yeah, we fetch, we do this. I'll bring it back, throw it again. And it's so funny how different breeds are. But what it does help you do is not only recognize the differences, but like you were saying earlier, sometimes we are like, oh, we just love this. Isn't this fun? And like for you, oh, poodles are so smart. Isn't this fun? And other people are like, oh my gosh, they ate this, then they ate this, then they ate, like I remember one breeder telling me her poodle opened her oven and pulled the food out, and I'm like, my German short hairs are not smart enough to do that.
My,
So,
my bed can open our sliding glass door and lift windows.
I would like that. Please, I'll go get it. I just feel like poodles are like, I'm gonna go do that. You can't stop me. And I think, you can love and embrace it, but you're absolutely right to point out that this will drive some people crazy or they're not equipped to handle it.
Right. And
Yeah.
I've definitely learned the stud I just mentioned, like he's a much higher drive dog than my others are. And I feel blessed that that happened because my puppies aren't as high drive as him. I
Yeah.
do have one puppy owner that has done a fantastic job raising her puppy, but she texted me once and was like, Max didn't want to wait for me to let him out, so he just opened the door himself because she had like a lever handle. She was just laughing about it. And I said, okay, the next thing to do is teach him how to shut the door behind him. Like, you know, and the cool thing is that's not out of reach, you know, like
Right.
she could definitely teach that. Like it's not, you know, as far as, I mean, poodles would be a great service dog for, you know, those
Yeah.
kind of behaviors or picking things up and, you know, those kind of things for anybody that might need it. But
Yeah.
I do aim for a little lower drive than he has.
I understand that too. Yeah. I've played a little with that with my German short hairs. Oh, what you had brought up earlier, and I thought it was so helpful. You said, in the beginning, you didn't really have that ideal puppy buyer dialed in, but now that you have, you're getting these much better buyers. Can you tell us a little bit about the process of like, one, how you became aware that they weren't maybe a good fit, and then how you sort of made the changes you need to make to get to what you have now?
Right. I actually think I looked at it a little bit differently, more in the dogs of
Oh,
what
okay,
are
yeah.
these. So it's almost like a backwards coming in from the back door as far as the ideal puppy buyer, that I really looked at my dogs and kind of took notes on, you know, my first litters and what their strengths were, what maybe their weakness, you know, what did people struggle with? That's a question that I ask in my 1 year puppy survey, is, you know, what was hardest about raising this puppy? Like what was the most challenging? And I feel like I've been able to kind of draw some lines because in every litter I've got an ideal for different situations. Like I've got my more laid back puppies and then I've got my higher drive puppies and so I feel like my ideal puppy buyer, knowing my genetics and my breed, I have to have a little broader ideal puppy buyer. Like, does that make sense? It's
Well,
not
you're getting a little bit of outcross, I would imagine, with your studs drive and your mom's how they are, right? So you're getting a little bit of a range.
there's a
But I think that's
variable,
very normal.
right? I
Because like
agree.
I don't have like I have hunting families that hunt 4 times a year and hunting families that hunt every weekend.
Sure,
It's very different dog.
right,
Absolutely.
sure.
Hmm.
So I feel like I was just able to look at the dogs, look at what they were producing, really, I don't know, just fine tune. There's something, like I said, I work in curriculum development, and I always joke with
Right.
curriculum development that it's always developing. And I agree. I feel like it's the same. Like if you want to always be getting better and always be learning, you don't just arrive. You're still learning and you're still figuring it
Yeah.
out and you're still watching for signs of what's a way I can fine tune this and how can I make this drive a little bit different to help with, a lot of people do have backyard chickens, and that's something poodles,
Mhm.
in fact, just the other day on a poodle page, I saw, there was a chicken eater that was like, we have to get rid of him. They had to rehome the dog because they couldn't manage the chickens,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it is a real thing. And so, like I said, I just feel like it's been a process with each litter that I've learned more about my own dogs, and their specific drives, their specific, what would be a genetic component of them,
Hmm.
as well as the breed in general. And so as I'm looking to add my next breeding animals, like I can look more specifically at those kind of things just to
Yeah.
set people up for success. One of the things I loved about the dog training class that just stuck with me, and why I hadn't thought about it before then, I don't know, but she always said, set your dog up to succeed. Like your goal is to praise them and tell them yes and give them a treat. Your goal isn't to trick them. Your goal isn't to like have them fail. Your goal is for them to succeed. So only stretch them. If it's a sit stay, you want them to stay for 10
Mhm.
seconds, don't go to 20 if they've never gone to 10, like set them up for success. So I think the same thing applies, with breeding puppies and knowing your genetic potential, whether it comes to size or their prey drive or their sociability, things like that, that how can we set people up for success?
Mhm.
Recognize those signs to say you'll be successful with this dog.
Right. Oh, I love that. Yeah, it makes sense. And so you're doing that with your people too.
Right, right. It makes it sound a little bit, but I do think it's good. Like I do think it works because I do
Hmm.
think dogs are adaptable.
Hmm.
I don't think temperament testing and really looking into temperament is uh I don't know, a diagnosis for life, like a
No,
be
I agree with you.
by any means. In fact, when I describe it to my puppy buyers and help them understand, so my puppies aren't selected till they're 7 weeks. I stick to the hard truth with the bull hard testing. And it is challenging sometimes because it's hard sometimes to get people to wait for that 7 weeks, to put a deposit down on a puppy that they don't know which one it is, especially with my poodles where they're multicolored because they don't know which colors are going to be available.
Yeah.
That is a little bit challenging, but I try to make it my goal is to educate them well enough that they realize that it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Like I feel like a good
Absolutely.
breeder is also a good educator, and an educator at heart. But as I explain to them, like, here's all the things that I can give you. Like I can give you so many more tools to match you to the best puppy if you wait till 7 weeks. Going back to
Yeah.
size, I keep size charts. In fact, I'm geeky enough that even up to excuse me, up to a whole year old, I'm asking for their weights, and I've got a chart just like they have at the pediatrician's office that I've been able to identify, like I said, where I have a variability in size that from
Yeah.
30 to 50 pounds is really where I'm specializing, but that's still a big window. I can see which puppies are going to stay towards the 30 pounds and which ones are going to push to the 50, and so I
Mhm.
can tell them at 7 weeks, I've already got the start of their growth curve. I've already, I know where they are. If I matched you at 2 weeks old, I couldn't give you that.
Sure.
I can, and so I just explained to them, and I have a page on my website that I feel like is helpful. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people and be like, oh yeah, I get it now. Like, so again,
Hmm.
as a breeder, if I'm a good educator and help them understand, here's the tools I can give you, and here's why it's to your benefit,
Yeah.
I like the way you word it, that you're buying into my program, not a specific puppy yet.
Yeah. Well, I feel like doesn't it make your life easier too when they're on board and you have all these colors and they're like, well, okay, I'll take that one instead. Like it doesn't matter if it's a better fit, they're excited about that match, which I love. So,
Something that I've enjoyed, I've done the last two litters. Again, I'm always trying to make it a little bit better, is I made a template in Canva for the videos. So I video the temperament test. And so I can just, and it'll say, here's what your puppy did when it was placed in a new environment with a new person, and then show that clip of the video. And here's what your puppy did when it was exposed to, an umbrella, something startling happening. And here's what, and just kind of, and I feel like there's a lot of power in choice for puppy buyers. Like, I don't want them to think that I'm going to tell them this is your puppy, end of story, no
right.
arguing. Like,
Yeah.
I still want them to choose, but I want to empower them by saying, here's all the tools I can give you so
Mhm.
that you can then choose the puppy. And I feel like the video of these hypothetical situations that make up a temperament test is valuable to them. And I've had people place a deposit at 4 weeks and be like, oh, but I really want this one. And they'll point to one puppy, and then the time will come. And even that puppy's still available when their pick comes around, but they're like, nope, actually it's this one. And I always tell people to trust their gut when it comes to selection. Like, if I give you all these tools and you feel like the tools are what gives you the ability to be drawn to the dog that's yours.
Mhm. I
And
like that.
I always tell them that I was just like, you know what? And I've seen it over and over, whether
Mhm.
it's the first pick or towards
Yeah.
the end pick, that it doesn't matter, because it's a matter of finding your puppy, not
Mhm.
the first pick puppy or the second pick puppy.
Oh, yeah, and people never remember the other puppies like about a week after they have their
Right.
dog. Like they never go. And I have had on occasion I have had on occasion when I'm telling the buyers like there's this one and it's like, it's the prettier one or something and it has a little bit higher energy, it's a little bit more drivey, it's gonna drive you crazy a bit more. Or you have this one who's almost as cute, right? And has all the temperament you want. When people have gone against that recommendation and picked the one that's a little bit crazier, invariably a few months later they say, "You were probably right. I probably should have got the other one. We're working with it, but it's work."
Right. And I think that choice gives them the oomph they need to
It
put
does.
forth that extra effort. So that's one reason I really value that I look at temperament testing as a tool. What are we looking at today?
Yep.
Recognizing it's 5 to 10 minutes in time. What do we see, and valuing it.
Mhm.
But also, I tell them as well that it's kind of a prescription that we can cater a training plan for you when you get this puppy. That if we have a
Yeah.
puppy that's a little sensitive to sounds or meeting new people or things like that, like I can help them understand, like, this puppy needs extra of this, and here's how you do it, and here's how you do it well.
Yeah.
So I feel like that helps people really feel confident and be like, oh, okay, because I'm going into it prepared.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. No, I love it. I think it's so good. And it sounds like, have you, because it sounds like your buyers are very receptive to this education. In fact, they're probably seeking it out.
some of them are,
Yeah. And so
not all of them.
have you done anything on your website or in your marketing that sort of groom them to be in that space?
No, and I've actually wondered about this. And in fact, in thinking about this podcast, it was like, when was I introduced to temperament testing? And I really am having a hard time remembering.
Hmm.
Like, I don't remember when I am very much an observer. Like, I'm part of a lot of, breed Facebook groups that
Sure.
I do a lot more observing and reading than I do participating, because I feel like you can learn a lot.
Mhm.
And I think I just started seeing temperament testing, like, oh, what's this? And, started researching and just saw, this is a good idea and this is helpful for not only me, but other people. Um, but as far as puppy buyers coming to me, I do have some, I do sell some service potential, dogs intended to be trained for service. And that's a no, that's not negotiable. They've got to find a breeder that does temperament testing at 7 weeks. But other people find me and I have to start from the beginning. And that's why my website, like I said, I've really worked hard on that particular page to help them understand, like, this is what I'm giving you and this is why. And I have been success, I feel like there's success when I get someone come to me and say, I want a brown phantom puppy with an abstract mark. you know,
Yeah.
they have this picture, and then to be able to back them up and say, let me teach you a little bit and let me show you what I can do that's even better than just knowing this color and this pattern that you're looking for. You know,
Yeah.
it's not uncommon for people to text me back and be like, oh wow, you're right. Like that is more important. Like I do feel like it's helpful. And people are receptive. I mean, people are receptive to learning something new.
Yeah. I think sometimes too, when you have an quote unquote easy sale, right? I want that puppy, buy it, sell it to me now. And you say, hey, have you considered that maybe this would be a better fit for you? It really does catch them because in theory, if we were just selling to make money and didn't care about the puppies, we'd be like, yeah, cool, buy it, you know. But we don't. And so sometimes I think that that little action of saying, hey, have you considered, reels them in, builds trust and rapport with you, and then it does set them up for success. Yeah, I love
And
it.
it's good to find ways to teach them. You know, as a teacher, it's called
Yeah.
pedagogy. Like it's a process of how do you help someone understand a concept. I feel like in teaching a puppy buyer, I've seen success in being able, like if there's two puppies that they're looking at and there's one that is a better temperament fit than the other. Like I said, invariably it's one with a, you know, brighter color package maybe or something that's going to attract them, some eye candy. I've at times taken those two puppies in a room, like just those, or just so that's just those two puppies, not the all of them together, but put them in a situation that they can see the difference between the two puppies. So for example, I had someone wanting a puppy that they were more laid back, lower, you know, would be better fit for a lower drive puppy. And I had a lower drive puppy, and then I had a bright, shiny, higher drive puppy that I knew they were attracted to that's color more. But I took them both in a room and I sat down on the Zoom call with them and I just took out a ball and started, you know, just rolling it softly, like playing. And one puppy sat by my leg and put its head on my leg and let me pet it while the other puppy played ball. And I just pointed out to them, like, here's the example, like this ball is available to both of these puppies. But this puppy is more concerned about where I am and wants to be with me. You know, is this the lifestyle you want, or do you want this? You know, so
Yeah.
kind of
Right.
setting up those scenarios. I don't feel like most people are ignorant of like, oh, I just want that one and it doesn't matter. Like, I think
No.
like, it really is our responsibility as breeders to educate them. So the more we can
Mhm.
come up with very, you know, tangible scenarios, like I said, that was an easy one. You know, that one worked really well, but similar things to point out, say, you know, this is a difference in this puppy versus this puppy. Now, is that puppy still going to play? Of course it's going to play. You know, the one that
Right.
was sitting on my leg, like it's not like it's going to be a bump on a log its whole life.
Right.
Which I have run into that problem. In fact, my first letter, I remember talking to a puppy buyer and I was so excited because I needed to sell these puppies and she seemed like such
Yeah.
a good fit. And I was describing this puppy as, you know, one of the calmer, more, you know, person centered. And she's like, I don't want that one. I want a wild, and she even said wild. She's like, I want a wild dog. Like I want to, you know, and I was like, oh, well, I messed up there. Like, maybe not messed up because maybe it was a better match. But the way she was picturing the lifestyle with her dog isn't, you know, was one that was always a crazy puppy. She's like, and she's like, I want a crazy puppy. Like that was fun to her, you know. And so
Yep, there are some people like out there.
right.
It's good. It is interesting, isn't it? And then I think it gets easier over time, right? Like as you go, you start to notice it. But I love your idea of putting them in the same room and showing people. I like to use like an example. Um, like I had a dog that was like a really pretty color and they wanted a different color than what they had had before. And so but when I explained that this dog is like you won't be able to conveniently take it anywhere. Like it's just a little bit too much of a homebody. It's introverted, a little bit more reactive, unfortunately. Um, and then they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah, we don't want that one." And it became really easy. And I think it's like you said, like there's not like buyers are, I think what I see now watching it for so many years is they have this idea that I want a dog that fills X place in my life. And they do some tests online or something like that. And then those tests kick out, and say, oh, you need this breed. And then like they forget all the other couple hundred breeds in that test, right? Because they're usually like 12 end results. And
Right.
then at the end of that, they think this is what I need. But what they don't understand at that point in time is that there's differences within a litter. There's differences within a breed. So different breeders are going to have different kinds of puppies, and then within even the litter, we have a ton. Um, and I think once you get them to say, "Oh, hey, they're actually different, even as siblings in this litter," then they seem to like wake up. And it's something else I see in the same kind of ideas. A lot of people think like all breeders are puppy mills. I don't know why this still exists. It drives me crazy. But as they talk about it, they say, okay, well, we're all, all breeders are puppy mills. I'm like, well, like, where do you think guide dogs come from? We just pick them up at the shelter. Oh, okay. you know, and I think once you understand, like from what I see, the reason puppy mills even exist, I don't think anybody got into that so that they could just like throw dogs in cages that were disgusting. Like, no. Um, they got overwhelmed and made a series of poor decisions that didn't fix it. I
Right.
mean, it's not, I mean, it's just interesting parallel, but anyway,
Uh,
yeah, I don't think anybody's really getting into it for that reason.
yeah, I think
But,
definitely
but
found.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I was a tangent, but absolutely. Okay. So getting back to, so you have this new buyer, you've been educating. Do you do anything like to prepare them? I mean, so how are you putting videos like on YouTube or Instagram when you do the temperament sharing or?
They just make them on Canva. Canva has a feature that you can do a public share.
Oh,
So
okay.
I make the video and then use the URL for the public share. And then I did put them on my website this last litter. So just the puppies I had left after the remaining puppies after the deposit holders picked. I
Hmm.
put the videos up and my social media is like, okay, go see the temperament testing videos. And
Yeah.
it is challenging because it's if you go into it with like completely cold, like I always say, have you heard of temperament testing? Are you familiar with it? And the majority aren't.
Yeah.
Some of them are, but the majority aren't. And so I'll describe it to them briefly. I'll have them read my website and then go watch
Hmm.
the video. And I have adapted my video template. Like I said, so there's like it stops and it says, okay, in this part of the test, we're doing this, and then it shows that part of
Okay.
the test. And this part of
Nice.
the test, we're going to see if the puppy's going to follow us, and then it shows that puppy. And so it's more newbie friendly. So if somebody that's not familiar with temperament testing, they're like, oh, okay, these are 10 situations we're going to put this puppy in to see how it responds.
Yeah. I gotcha.
And they do seem to like they ask good questions about it. Like they seem to even the people have never heard of it. I feel like I'm getting enough education to them that it's giving them some value.
Oh, good.
And
Yeah.
if anything else, it's also just seeing the puppy in a real life situation. Like,
Hmm.
what are you going to do when a new person comes? Is it going to follow you? Is it going to play tug with you? Is it going to retrieve a ball? What is it going to do?
Hmm. No, that makes so much sense. And I think it does, it starts to make those differences very tangible in a way that I think when you just say, oh, you want this one, or sometimes if you haven't built the rapport with the buyer, and sometimes it happens not because you don't have it, but because you just didn't get an opportunity to talk with them. They were so excited, everything seemed right.
Right. Right.
Um, but I find that that's where you get that opportunity to finally like educate them and they can finally see those differences. So that looks
Yeah.
fun. I like that a
But
lot.
the video format has worked out really well for me. There is
Yeah,
scoring that goes with puppy aptitude testing is
sure,
another
absolutely.
way to call it. My experience with service dog trainers has varied. I feel like they're all over, some are they have really specific things about what they're looking for, which is very understandable. But I've learned that the score to me is like the actual number score is a lot less important to me than
Yeah.
just the reaction because the scores oftentimes puppies like as you look down the scores and the descriptions it'll be like oh well the puppy did this thing on a score 3 and this thing on a 4, which one do you circle because and it's
Mhm.
okay to just circle them both, that
Sure.
it was somewhere there. But I kind of as you learn and grow and experience things, what I have adapted to a little bit more is like I'm more interested in what the puppy did. Was the
Mhm.
tail up but they were nervous? Did they run behind, the tester?
Sure.
Like more looking at what they did. And I find that that's a little bit more tangible to a puppy buyer as well as myself as a breeder. I
Mhm.
always try, there's always things in the temperament testing as I'm, watching from afar that I'm like, oh, it surprised me of that puppy, because we know our
Mhm.
puppies, we've been around them, but I do think
Yeah.
it's important to put them in that situation with someone that doesn't know them, but is, savvy of dogs, obviously isn't going to do something dumb, but
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
it is eye-opening. And I have seen that there's times that because they're introduced to someone new, that I see something that I wouldn't have seen if I just did it all myself.
Yeah. No, that makes so much sense. I think the scoring as you bring up is really good because it's the scoring just helps you see differences, in my opinion. And if you in the end you need it less. The more you do it, the less you need the scoring because like what you're pointing out. Hmm.
And there is value. I mean, they'd call that a quantitative thing, like something that can be measured. It's a number.
Right.
There is value in quantitative things. There is value in like that numbering system
Yeah.
versus more, the opposite would be qualitative of like observation and opinion.
Hmm.
There's definitely value in that. But I've seen in working with service dog trainers that are helping someone select a puppy, like they usually just have their own opinion anyway. So just let them do it. Like give them the video, give them the tools, and recognize
Yeah,
that. So
that makes sense. Yeah, it makes sense. That's perfect. Okay, so let's rewind for a second. So you were telling us that you had a little bit of a harder time selling after that first litter, right? And of course, everyone's first litter it's hard. Like don't pretend it's super easy. It's
yes.
usually not without a lot of preparation, and we often don't know what to prepare for. So after that, you made changes, and now we have all this other stuff. So can you kind of just walk through some of the changes that you did to get us to like where you are now, where it's a lot easier?
Um, Basically, I feel like looking back, the things that made those step-by-step improvements is just adding, the website was I had a website my first
Yeah.
litter, but it's made a lot of improvements. Like I really learned a lot about SEO,
Mhm.
and understanding how to optimize search engines, like adding the reviews from buyers, having a Google business listing.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of things, which I love that all of this was very well outlined in the Dog Breeder Society of just step by step. Like it's good to look at it and realize you can only do a little bit at a time, just take a step at a time. But know that if you're ever in that situation, find one thing to improve each time, so work on your
Yeah.
website. How can you make it more readable? One of my bosses at work that's now retired was very crazy and critical of websites. So when we were working on something, she'd come to a website and be like, that is so dumb. Like you shouldn't. And something she always said to me, she's like, so there was times I'd be like, should we make a tutorial on that? Like, should we help
Mhm.
teachers do this? And she always said to me, she said, if there has to be a tutorial to operate your website, then your website is bad. Like
Oh,
um, it has to just be easy. Like
more intuitive.
yeah,
Yeah,
like intuitive is the right word, yes.
I like
And so that was something I really tried to, okay, if I'm a puppy buyer and I'm coming to this website, like I need to know how much the puppies are. I need to, what do I need to know? And so I really just tried to be really critical, put my boss's brain in my head, her criticalness,
yeah.
and go through and really work on the SEO, even little things like adding the meta descriptions for readers and different ADA requirements helps improve your websites on Google optimization and stuff like that. So just every little thing, looking at my pictures, dog photography is really important as you're trying to
Mhm.
market dogs in both making them look good, but also helping people correctly identify if this dog is a fit in their lifestyle. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
work
Oh,
really
yeah, yeah, yeah. So how did you do that? Hmm.
Um, I've had to really work. I've had to develop some grooming skills. I always have groomed my own dog, even when I had just one.
Hmm.
But I really worked hard to learn better skills and, just really make sure that my dogs are something that when people look at them, they're like, oh, wow, look at that dog. You don't have to be a poodle lover, but
Yeah.
that's kind of my goal when I go for a walk is someone like, oh, that's a good looking dog. And I think that of any purebred that is intentional, like you should be able to look at it and be like, wow, that is a good looking dog. Like those are the kind of
Yeah.
dogs we want to be breeding. Obviously, pairing with all the other things we're looking at. But Just really worked. There's a Facebook group for dog photography that I found that has been helpful. I joke a little bit that taking
Mhm.
puppy pictures is me and my daughter, we work hard at that. It's hard to position and
It
take
is.
pictures of puppies and have them look
Mhm.
good. But just really, like I said, in our lifestyle, as we go to 4-H, as we go to classes, I've spent the money on the professional photos just to make sure that what people are seeing is the lifestyle these dogs are. You
Yeah.
So, like I said, so improving my website, improving, the way that I portray my dogs, and that kind of ties into social media. What am I showing on Facebook and Instagram? How am I portraying them as how they fit in someone's lifestyle? So I worked a lot on that. Another thing that I've added recently that I've seen a really good help is adding an email newsletter. I've tried to make my newsletter something that, regardless of if you're maybe a future puppy buyer or even a past puppy buyer, that there's something there for you, like grooming tips, tools that I found that are
Yeah.
helpful, training tips, introducing them to a new trainer or a new book or a toy, and different enrichment toys are important with poodles, I feel like, and fun. People like enrichment. Um,
Yeah. It is fun.
Stuff like that. So things like that, and like I said, just really looking like, and you can find all of this in the Dog Breeder Society that I love is like, okay, find something and focus on it, and then move to the next one. Now focus on
Yeah.
this, and just give yourself some space to grow and learn.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that I've always hoped, as far as like appealing to puppy buyers, that they see that I'm improving, that I'm learning, that I'm becoming better each time, because I feel like that's what makes, and I feel like that's what brings value to an experienced breeder. I've
Hmm.
thought about this recently as I'm coming to the end and retiring my first two females this year. I've
Yeah.
thought about the reality of, if I was still doing this the way that I did when I was a kid, which is just breed your own dogs and then
Yeah.
see them and then you're done, all of this I've learned would go to waste. It would
Hmm.
just over, it would end. And then someone else would pick up and they would have to do the learning process and then they would end. And so I've just really realized like the value of a program to be able to continue breeding, whether that's through guardian homes or through, rehoming your retired animals, because you can't have them all the time. But
Yeah.
I've just seen the benefit that I can give more to these puppy buyers by taking everything I've learned over the last 4 years and applying it. Like, it's going to keep getting better.
It's a cumulative advantage.
Right,
Absolutely. Like you
right,
get better and better every year,
right.
and it makes it better for your buyers to have access to you,
Which
you
is
know?
another point of education to puppy buyers, that they've heard
Yeah.
the puppy mill, phrases, they've heard these kind of things. And I do try to teach them about ethics. In fact, on my home, I have a social media post that I thought I did a good job on, that is, do you know the vet, Dr. Pole?
Yeah.
So there's an episode, my kids love that. When one of my little boys was little, the only thing I had two things that I could get him to do what I wanted. You can watch Dr. Pole and you can take a bath. I could get him to do anything.
Yeah.
We watched a lot of Dr. Pole one winter, and there was one where someone brought in a puppy that was sick they just barely got it from a breeder that was probably the definition of a puppy mill, too many puppies, sick puppies. And so she was rescuing it. And he was explaining to her that you actually are adding to the problem when you rescue this puppy, because you're bringing money to this business that doesn't have the same ethics that you want to support. And so I used
Oh,
that Dr. Pole episode in his quote in
nice.
helping people, educate puppy buyers on, here's what you want to, here's some things you look for. And again, it's not a black and white answer of what's good and bad. It depends what's
Yeah.
important to you, what's important to you, as far as, and that's something I really value in our program, is that I want our dogs to be in the same pet lifestyle that their puppies are.
Hmm.
And we can only do that, and that's my future goal, is being able to have a dog and to raise it and train it so that when it's done having puppies, someone is like, I want that dog, because not everybody is really great at raising a puppy.
Yeah.
There's
That's
there
true.
there are excellent dog homes out there
Yeah.
that aren't excellent puppy homes, and it takes a lot more care to place those dog, to really make sure that there's the right education going with placing those older dogs. But that's a future goal that I have, that we can raise a puppy and train it to the point that when we need to rehome, a retired animal, that they would look at it like, wow, this is a superstar. And I am so blessed to take in this puppy, this dog that's already potty trained, that's been living as a pet, So that's kind of my future goals. But like I said, that education point is just really important in helping those puppy buyers, like you have to be an educator to be a good breeder, I think.
I don't disagree with you. I think it's like, I hate to be like, well, you're going to have to love this, but you kind of do.
And it's cool though. Like, I feel like that's what, I mean, you've got to have something that drives you because there's a lot of puppy poop, and there's a lot of hard stuff, and there's hard puppy buyers, and there's, times that things are going to be difficult. But ultimately, and for me, that passion really comes from seeing that perfect placement, seeing that puppy, grow, at a year old, when they're texting me saying, I can't imagine life without this dog. And you look at the steps it took to get to that point, and it's no single step.
Right.
It's everything added together of, finding, I recommend that they find a trainer to work with. I recommend that they do, different things, like steps along the way. And that started with my website.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So those
Absolutely.
tips of success for me as a breeder are the same tips of success that are going to translate for my puppy buyers. That if I have the website that they find, that they, see trust in, that they recognize this is someone that knows what they're talking about. This is someone I can approach. That's another thing with breeders that blows my mind away sometimes. When I was looking for my first dogs, I couldn't believe how many breeders were just not very nice. Good grief.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, just very critical of, like, I had one breeder not even willing to sell me a dog because I had kids. They're like, puppy scratch. And I'm like, yeah, I can handle it. Like, like and so, like I said, I feel like every successful step as a breeder has the exact mirror of how we're setting a puppy buyer up for the dog of their dreams, for the situation that they're looking for, that, I think it all fits together.
Yeah, no, it makes so much sense. I love that. And I love how you've kind of used your website as a place to not just like share all this knowledge, right? But it boosts your authority. It gives them answers. It's such a beautiful, like, I don't know, synergy that's happening.
And it pushes me to be better. Like, it pushes, rather than just be comfortable with where I am and what I know, to say, oh, I need to find a way. Like, right now, there's some people that would really like to learn to groom their own dogs. So that's my next goal. How can I create some tutorials and create some things that you can groom your own dog to save that money? Because that's a challenge with the standard poodle, is in most places, it's a little bit expensive to have your dog groomed. So here's a tool and some education I can provide that you can make that affordable for you.
Yeah. I think it's perfect. All right. Well, Andrea, thanks so much for coming on the show. It has been so good hearing your story. I just love that you were like an ag, you like do all the ag stuff. I mean, it just has such a cool crossover to breeding. But before we go, could you share with us, like, if you had advice for new breeders just getting started, what would you tell them?
My piece of advice, which we've kind of built on this throughout the episode, is just take those small steps to keep learning and keep improving. Really focus on your website, but look at it from the heart of a teacher. Know that if you want to be a good breeder, you also need to be a good teacher. Think about the teachers in your life that made an influence on you and how they did it, and apply that to your dog breeding program so that you are able to educate puppy buyers. You'll find better ways to do your website, to your social media. Everything will be influenced for the better. Everything will be influenced for the better if you approach that from the heart of a teacher and saying, how can I teach people about my breed? How can I teach them how to raise their puppy right so that it becomes the dog they dream of? How can all of those things, if you twist that into, my job is to be a teacher, you'll find success, and your puppy buyers will be successful.
So good. All right. Well, where can people find you?
My website is desertskypoodles.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram.
Sure. Under Desert Sky Poodles.
Okay.
Perfect. Easy enough. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
If you found this episode helpful, please tap that like button. It helps me better understand you and supports the channel. If you're a current or aspiring dog breeder, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos come out. Thanks.